All right, you guys, this is test 1 extra credit review, okay? Here's number 1. So this is an absolute value inequality, and a lot of these questions on this test, you have to remember the steps, like it is for sure the key to getting these right, okay? So step number 1 is to get that absolute value alone. So you take your 2 and you move it over and you have a 6. And then you divide by 3, and 6 divided by 3 is a 2. This is where lots of people are messing up. So the next step is to make it an equal sign. Don't skip that step, please. Then the next step is to split it in 2 and drop that absolute value symbol. Okay, now you solve. So the 4 comes over and becomes a negative. So you have a negative 2 over there. Divide, negative 2/5. Over here, pull the negative 4 over. You get negative 6. Divide, and you get negative 6/5. Go to your number line. The negative 6/5 is smaller, so it goes on the left. The negative 2/5 goes on the right. There's no equal sign, so they're both equal, but they're both open, pardon me. Look right there. Greater than means shade outside. Now you have to actually write your answer. So you can write it however you want. I always choose interval. So negative infinity to negative 6 with a parenthesis. Union, negative 2/5 to infinity. Everything's closed with a parenthesis. And that is your actual answer right there. Okay? All right, question number 2, same type of problem. So step number 1 is to get it alone. So the 3 comes over and becomes a positive. So that gives you a negative 6. And now I have to get rid of that negative right there. So I'm going to change the signs on the right and the left. But when dividing or multiplying by negative, I have to reverse that inequality. So it's a less than. Here's the step a lot of you guys are missing, so please make sure you don't. So that's an equal sign. Now you split it into 2, and it looks like that. The 7 comes over and becomes a negative, so negative x equals negative 1. Change your signs, x equals 1. Pull the 7 over, you get negative 13. Change your signs, you get a positive 13. Draw your number line. 1 on the left, 13 on the right. You do have an equal sign, so it's closed. And you look at the symbol when it's alone, which is there when it's isolated. So less than means inside. You don't look here. You look once it's isolated right there. So your answer is 1 to 13, both closed with brackets. That's it. That's your answer. Okay. Question number 3. A, is this a function? Okay, so I can tell by looking at it that it's a function. And the reason I can tell is because the y is not squared, and the y is also not an absolute value. So is it a function? Yes, it is. And now they're asking me for domain. So the easiest way to do that is to solve this so that x squared comes over and becomes a negative, and then divide by a negative 5. So you have y equals, I'm going to reorder the top like that, and I'm going to divide them separately by negative 5. So then I get y equals, negative over negative is a positive. Push the 5 out in front. There's no number on top, so it's a 1. Positive over negative is a negative 5. So this is just a parabola shifted down 5. They want to know the domain. If you travel from left to right, everything touches the graph. So the domain is all real numbers. Okay, question 3b. Question 3b is nice because I can tell the second I look at it that it's not a function because this y is squared. So I'm just going to write no. Don't worry about justification. That's it. Okay, question 4. So 4a, they're asking you to find the domain of f of x. So here's your f of x. I have an even root, so the inside must be greater than or equal to 0. So 2x has to be greater than 3. X has to be greater than or equal to 3/2. That's your answer. Didn't tell you how to write it. We should probably get in the habit just writing, like labeling it. So domain colon, like that. Okay? All right, question 4b. Find the domain of g of x. So here's your g of x. And I have a fraction with an x on the bottom. So the bottom cannot be 0. Therefore, x cannot be a -1. That's my domain, and I'm done. Okay? 4c, find f of 2. So I'm going to take this equation right there, and right there where I see that x, I'm going to put in a 2. So I'm going to go f of 2 is equal to the square root of 2 times 2 minus 3. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 3 is 1. The square root of 1 is a 1. So that's all I have to do. You could also just stick it in your calculator. Okay? 4D, find f of 14. So basically it's the same thing, except put a 14 right there. So that's the square root of 2 times 14 minus 3. 2 times 14 is 28, minus 3 is 25. Square root of 25 is 5. That's my answer. Okay, 4E, asked you to find g of 2. So now I'm going to go into this guy, and right here I'm going to put in a 2, and right here I'm going to put in a 2. So I'm going to go -4 times 2 over 2 plus 1. So that is a -8 over a +3, and I would just leave it just like that. Okay, 4F. Find g of x minus 3. So that's a -4 times x minus 3 over x minus 3 plus 1. Okay, one thing I want to say about this. I talked to a couple of people yesterday, and look what people were doing. So they were putting parentheses here, which doesn't do any good. And then they were taking this x minus 3 and that x minus 3 and canceling it. But you can't do that because of that 1. If that 1 wasn't there, you could totally cancel those. But you cannot do that. So don't do that, and don't do parentheses because it doesn't do you any good. So on the top distribute, you get a -4x plus 12. On the bottom, you have x minus 2. There's nothing you can do. That's your answer. Okay, number 5. So 5 is a lot like 4. So 5a is find f plus g of x. So that means take f of x and add g of x. Okay, so f of x is 3x squared plus 1. G of x is 3x over x minus 2. Put a 1 underneath. Common denominator is x minus 2. Some of you are getting a common denominator when you multiply. Not when you multiply, it's only when you add or subtract. Okay, so this guy's missing the x minus 2. So I have to multiply that by x minus 2. But guys, you have a binomial times a binomial, so you have to FOIL that. So that gives you 3x to the third minus 6x to the second plus x minus 2. This guy already has the x minus 2, so I just write plus 3x. Some people will write the top down, but they don't write the bottom. And they're like, oh, well, eventually I'm going to write the bottom. No, you can't do that. Every line has to be complete, so be careful. So this is a -3x squared. 1x plus 3x is a 4x minus 2 all over x minus 2, and that's my answer. Okay, question 5b, go f of x minus g of x. Okay, so it's going to be a lot the same. So here's your f of x. You're subtracting your g of x. Put a 1 underneath. Common denominator is x minus 2. This guy's missing the x minus 2. So I'm going to get the same thing that I got over here when I FOIL. So that is 3x to the third minus 6x to the second plus x minus 2. Here's where, there's no distribution. A lot of times what happened, guys, just so you know, don't change what you're doing, but like if this was a +1, then you have to be really careful because that negative needs to be distributed through. So the 3x is negative and the 1 is negative. Okay, that's super common, but that wasn't a binomial up there, so it's easier. So I'm just going to write that down. So now I have negative 3x to the second minus 2x minus 2 over x minus 2. That's my answer. Okay, question 5c. So 5c is to take f of x and divide it by g of x. So see that division line? I'm going to make it big. Up above I write my f of x, which is right here. Underneath I write my g of x, which is right there. Okay, now I'm going to make that big long division bar a division symbol. So I'm going to go divided by 3x over x minus 2. Put a 1 underneath. Leave your first fraction the way that it is. Division goes to a multiplication. Flip it upside down. Nothing will cancel. Some of you are cross-canceling here. Like you're doing the 3x plus 1 times the 3x. That's false. The only time you do that, if that's an equals, and that is not an equals, it's a multiply. So you just multiply the tops together and the bottoms together. So put parentheses here, and you're foiling. And that gives you 3x to the third minus 6x to the second plus x minus 2 all over 3x. It's important that you know that nothing cancels. I can't cancel any x's because this 2 right here doesn't have an x. And I also can't cancel like divide by 3 because 3 doesn't go into 1, nor does it go into a negative 2. So I'm done. Okay. Question D. So this is 5D. Is find f of negative 2 and multiply it by g of negative 2. So my strong advice to you is go off to the side and take that f of x equation and put in a negative 2. So it's 3 times negative 2 squared plus 1. Negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 1 is 13. G of negative 2 is, if you look at your g of x, it is this. So that would be 3 times negative 2 over negative 2 minus 2. That's a negative 6 over a negative 4, which is a positive 3/2. So then I take 13 and I multiply it by 3/2. I don't need a common denominator. I don't cross multiply. I just multiply the tops together and then the bottoms together, and that's it. Okay? Okay, question number 6. Find the domain. So if you look at the graph and travel from the left to the right, the graph hits every x value. B is range, start low. The smallest x that touches it is a negative 1, and it does touch it, so it's a parenthesis, and that goes to infinity. Question C, x-intercepts must be written as ordered pairs, so those are negative 2, 0, positive 2, 0, and 4, 0. Question D, the y-intercept, let's see if I can read this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like 8. I can't see because it's so small. So I'm actually going to look at the key on number 6 and just make sure I don't tell you wrong. Yeah, it was 8. So y-intercept x is 0, so that is 0, 8. Okay, question E, local minimum point. If it says point, guys, write it as a point. So that's negative 3, negative 1. Question F, find f of 3. If x is 3, what's y? Negative 1. So some of you, I did negative 3. Sorry, this should be positive 3 up there. Some of you are writing the answer to question F as an ordered pair, and it's not. So they're saying if x is 3, what's y? So that's how you write your answer, okay? Question G and H are where is it increasing and where is it decreasing? So if you travel from the left to the right, from negative infinity to an x value of 3, it decreases, and from 3 on, it increases, okay? Question I, local minimum value, if it says value, it's y equals, and the y value of that minimum point right there is -1. Question J, for what x value is it equal to 3? So what you do is you go up to a y value of 3, and then you travel to the right, and it's x equals 1, and you've got another one, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. X equals 5. Okay, so when x is 1 and then when x is 5, then y is 3. Okay, question number 7, A, determine if this is even, odd, or neither. So you have to go f of -x is -x, no parentheses necessary at the beginning, and then it's the 5th root of 3 times -x squared. So you have to show that work, and you have to simplify. So that's a -x times the 5th root of 3. Negative squared is a positive x squared. Then negative f of x means just put a negative and then write down what the f of x is, which is that. So then if you look, this is equal to this. So you have to say why your answer is what it is. So I'm going to say f of -x is equal to negative f of x. Therefore, my answer is odd. Okay, question 7b. So here is your original. And the first thing you have to do is find f of -x. So it's negative x squared minus 2. So a negative squared is a positive x squared, but you've got that negative sitting there. And then if you look, that matches that. So the answer is f of x is equal to f of -x. It's either even or odd. If two things are equal, it's always even or odd. And odd is when the negative equals the negative. So I know that this is even. Okay, question 7c. So here is your f of x. So the first thing I'm going to do is f of -x. So it's -3 times -x, square root of -x minus 1. Negative times a negative is a positive 3x, square root of -x minus 1. And this are not the same. So now I'm going to do negative f of x. Well, that's easy. This is just a monomial, guys. So negative f of x just means change that sign, which means make it a positive, or negative is a positive 3x over the square root of x minus 1. So I'm comparing those three things, and none of them are the same. So the answer is f of x is not equal to f of -x, which is not equal to negative f of x. Therefore, the answer is neither. Okay, question 8. Average rate of change means slope. So here's your equation. And they want to know from -1 to +1. Okay, so I'm going to come down here. I'm going to go f of -1 is 2 times -1 squared plus 5. You have to show this work. -1 squared is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 minus 5 is a -3. And then f of +1 is 2 times 1 squared minus 5. 1 squared is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 minus 5 is a -3. So these both give you a -3, and I want you to write those points down. So now you have m equals -3 minus a -3, that's a +3, over 1 minus a -1, that's +1. So that's 0 over 2. 0 over 2 is a 0. So you cannot write it as 0 over 2. You have to know that 0 over 2 is a 0. Okay, question 9. So here is your piecewise function. Okay, so find, question A, find f of -3. So is that less than 0 or greater than or equal to 0? It's less than 0, so I'm going to use that top equation, equation 1. So it's 3 times -3 plus 2. That's -9 plus 2, which is a -7. Question B, find f of 0. Equation 2, because equation 2 has the equal sign. So that's a negative 1/2 times 0 minus 1, which is negative 1. You have to show this work. Just that top line is all you need. Question C, find f of 5. 5 is bigger than 0, so it's a negative 1/2 times 5 minus 1. So that's a negative 5 over 2 minus 1. You guys, a 1 is the same thing as 2 over 2. So I'm going to write it as 2 over 2. And then I've got my common denominator. A negative 5 and a negative 2 is a negative 7. And I'm done. Okay, now I'm going to graph it. So come over here. Your first equation is y equals 3x plus 2. That's a line. So I'm going to go up 2, make a dot. The slope is 3, so I'm going to go up 3, right 1. I can also go down 3 and left 1. So it looks like this. And I draw in my line. Okay, but that line is only supposed to be there if x is smaller than 0. So all these guys over here, all these guys over here, x is greater than 0. So sorry, let me fix this a little bit. It's an open circle, down 3, right 1, looks like that, okay? The next one is y equals negative 1/2 x minus 1. So I'm going to go down 1, make a dot. Then I go down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2. So my graph looks like this, and that's greater than. So all the guys to the right of 0 stay. I know I have an equal sign, so I'm good. Okay, question number 10. Okay, so question A, find f of negative 2. So this is equation 1, this is equation 2, less than or equal to negative 1, greater than or equal to negative 1. If x is a negative 2, it's less than a negative 1, so it's equation 1. So it's a negative 3 times a negative 2 minus 1. That's 6 minus 1, which is 5. Okay, question B, find f of 0. So if x is a 0, it's bigger than a negative 1. So that's negative 0 squared, which is 0. Done. Question C, find f of 5. 5 is equation 2. So the negative, guys, see how this negative is not squared? So it's going to be negative, and then 5 squared. 5 squared is 25, but you have a negative out in front of it. Done. Okay, let's graph this. So here's your xy axis. Okay, so down 1, make a dot, down 3, right 1, down 3, right 1. You can also go up 3, left 1. Okay, so here's your line. And I did not do that right. Down and right. That's a positive slope, and the slope is actually negative. Okay, so go down 1, make a dot, and then I go down 3, right 1, up 3, left 1. So it looks about like that. I need you guys with me to correct me how you always do, which is a good thing. Okay, so it looks about like that. So the only guys that are supposed to stay are the ones that are less than a negative 1. So negative 1 is here. So all these things over here I have to get rid of. Maybe. Okay. Looks like that. And no equal sign on that endpoint. So it's an open circle like that. The next one is y equals negative x squared. That's a parabola. Vertex at the origin, the opens down, normal stretch. Right 1 down 1, left 1 down 1. Right 2 down 4. I'm only supposed to keep the guys that are bigger than a -1. That's to the right of a -1, which is here. X is -1. Close circle, done. Okay, number 11. Okay, graph this. So I kind of wish I would have given you multiple graphs. So basically, looks like this. Pencil at the origin, here's your parent. Right one up one, left one down one. Right 2 up 8, left 2 down 8. Looks like that, okay? So you have a reflection across the x-axis. You know it's an x-axis because that negative comes first. So I'm going to reflect this. So if you're reflected across the x-axis, this up part right here would come down, okay? And this down part right here would come up. So my new graph is going to be left one up one, right one down one, and then that 8 is just super steep. So it looks like that. And then I have one more transformation, and that is to go up 1. So I'm just going to take that exact graph and just shift it up 1. Right there. And then I'm going to go right one down 1, left one down 1, right 2 up 8, or right 2 down 8. There's your graph. Okay? Question number 12. Use this picture. To the right is a picture. What? Oh, adjust it. Okay, so the points they gave you were -1, 0. They gave you -1/2, +1/2, and that's a turning point. They gave you 2, 0. It's kind of hard because there's no, well, yeah, there are marks, but you can't see it. That is not a turning point. It looks like that other turning point is +1, -2. Yeah. And so I'm going to put a T right there. So I'm actually going to change all those 4 points. Okay, I got my 2 turning points, so I'm good. Okay, so here's your equation. It is g of x equals -f of x divided by 2. I need to see this on your paper. X becomes y becomes. So right here, the x is divided by 2. So I do the opposite, which is multiply. The negative is out here on the outside. Remember, if you just take that whole f of whatever and make it a y, that's your formula for y, okay? So let's come over here and change these points. So the x's you just times by 2. So -1 times 2 is -2. -1/2 times 2 is a -1. 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. Y's, change the sign. 0, -1/2, 0, +2. I do have a reflection. If you look at the parent graph, the end behavior is left down, right up. Since I have reflection, a single reflection, those reverse. So there's my end behavior, okay? Keep in mind that this is a turning point and this is a turning point, okay? Now I just plot these. Okay, so -2 zeros here. -1, -1/2 is about here. 4, 0 is here, and 2, 2 is here, and I have a turning point here and a turning point here. And you see here I'm supposed to start up. So it's going to be come up like that, hit it and turn. I don't know exactly where it hits the x-axis, but hit it and turn, come down, hit that guy, done. Okay? All right, number 13. So what's this equation? Well, that thing is shifted right 3, and it's shifted down 2. It opens down, and it actually has a shrink. Those values are so bad, and I'm sorry. So it's supposed to be 1, 1, and we've gone 2, 1. So actually, you know, a better way to say that is we went right 1, and then the next movement is a half. Because if you go to that vertex and you go write one down a half, write one down a half, write one down a half, then that's it. So it's actually called a shrink of 1/2. Okay, and it's absolute value. So it's going to be y equals, it opens down, so it has a negative, so I took care of that. Shift it right 3, so that's -3, took care of that. Down 2, right there. A shrink of 1/2, stick that in front, that's it. Okay, number 14, find the difference quotient. Okay, so this is the one that will probably be like a multiple choice question on your midterm and or final. So here's that. So f of x plus h means put an x plus h right there. So it's the square root of x plus h plus 1. Then you subtract that f of x, and then you divide it by h, okay? That's your setup. Now, let's look at what we put on the answer for 14. Yeah, that's what we put. But just know on the quiz or test or midterm, whatever, they might say what's the first step to simplify. That is not the case here, but just understand this. That top guy's a binomial. So to get rid of the square root on the top, you would write the exact top down, but you would change the middle sign. So it looks like that. So on the multiple choice option, that whole thing would be your correct answer, and you don't have to go further. Like I said before, that is not the problem here. This is just your answer. If you look at the back, that's what's there, but just be aware. Okay, number 15. So deal with this parabola, find the vertex and all those other things without putting it in vertex form. So it's super important that you know that without putting in vertex form does not mean complete the square. It means to find h, you go negative b over 2a. So that's -4 over 2 times 1. So that's a -2. So I know my vertex is -2 comma something. To find the y, I just plug it in. Put the -2 in parentheses. Looks like this. -2 squared is 4. 4 minus 8 is a -4. Plus 1 is a -3. So there's my vertex, okay? Axis of symmetry is x equals, that x coordinate, you have to have the x equals. Y-intercept I'm going to find later, and after I graph it, and the minimum value. The minimum value is the vertex. How do I know that? Because this is a parabola that opens up, and that goes there, but they want the value, not the minimum point, so it's y equals -3, okay? Let's go ahead and graph it. So I'm going to go left 2, down 3, and it has a normal stretch. So let me add some more points here. Okay, so it's right there. Normal stretch, right 1, up 1, left 1, up 1, and then right 2, up 4, left 2, up 4. Looks like that. Okay, so the y-intercept is there, and that ordered pair is 0, 1. That's it. Okay, number 16. Here's your problem. It's very much like an absolute value inequality, just easier. So step 1, isolate it. So pull your 1 over, you get a -5. Step 2, divide by a negative. There's nothing to reverse because it's not an inequality, so no worries. Then split it. And then solve it. So -2x equals -2, divide, x equals 1. Move your 3 over, it becomes a negative, that's -4. Divide, x equals 2. There are your answers, okay? All right, let's see what else we got here. Number 17. This one, they do want you to put it in vertex form, which means they want you to complete the square. Okay, so here's your original problem. Some people were wanting to not keep the y in the equation. You got to keep it in there. So take this one and pull it that way. So I have y minus 1 plus blank equals. So this is what I have on the right-hand side, and that -4 cannot be there. So I take out a -4. See the next parenthesis? Do it like really far away. So if I take out a negative, negative goes to positive, positive. 4 divided by 4 is a 1, x squared. 8 divided by 4 is a 2x plus blank. Some people are doing this. You're putting your parenthesis, trying to erase, put your parenthesis right here. And that is wrong. The parenthesis goes after. So don't put it there, put it there, okay? 2 divided by 2 is a 1. 1 to the second is a 1. You do not balance with a 1 because a -4 times a positive 1 is a -4. So you have y minus 5 equals -4. Factor that and it goes to an x and a plus. Square root of 1 is 1. The whole thing's squared. Pull your 5 over. Looks like that. And there we go. And they want to know the vertex. X is here, change the sign. Y is there. Okay. They want to know the axis of symmetry. That's x equals -1. And then they want us to graph it. I should have given you a grid. Left 1, down 5. Right there. It opens down with a stretch of 4. So right here, right 1 down 4, left 1 down 4. There's your graph. Done. Okay, question 18. What question 18 is asking you to do is to find f of 2 and subtract g of 2. So if you look at the table, when x is a 2, f of x is a -4, and g of x is 3. So f of 2 is right there. It's a -4 minus g of x is a 3. -4 minus 3 is a -7. Done. Question 19. Consider this. What's your first step? Well, if you have an absolute value inequality, the first step is to isolate it. So you'd move the 1 over. It becomes a negative. So that ends up with the absolute value of x minus 4 is less than 2, and that would be option B. Some of you answered like multiple, like option A and option D, but just be careful. Only do that when they say circle all that apply, okay? Question 20, and then we're done. So, you're going to find f of 1, and you're going to subtract g of 1. So if you go to an x value of 1, the f of x is the line. What's the y value? 2. Then go minus. G of x is the parabola. If x is 1, y is 3. So that gives me a -1, and I'm done. Question B, they're asking you to take f of -1 and multiply it by g of -1. Go to the x value of -1. Your f of x is the line. What's the y value? -2. The g of x is the parabola. What's the y value on the parabola? That would be -1. Multiply those together, you get a 2, and that is it. Okay, 21. Okay, so you have this equation. Okay, whenever you have a word problem, guys, I always want you to start with x equals y equals. Whatever it's solved for is your y. Read the words. What does R of P stand for? Revenue. So now I know the y is the revenue. The P is represented, the X is represented by a P, and that means price. Read the question. How much did the manufacturer charge to maximize their price? Okay, so I'm going to go, maximum just means vertex, so -b over 2a. So -2,000 divided by 2 times -4. So a negative over negative is a positive. And 2,000 divided by 8, I'm feeling like that is not going to be a clean number. Yeah, it is. It's 250. So that is 250. That's the price. If they want revenue, we have to take the 250 and plug it in. they're saying how much should they charge. That would be price. Add your $sign. There's your answer. Okay? You guys are awesome. Study hard. Get lots of sleep. I'm sure you're going to be fine. Okay?